day, Israel. Today's video will be a template of what this entire video series is designed to prove. The first half of our theory is a comprehensive look, meaning a building of information to look at what the world understands as the beginning, middle, and end of the Atlantic slave trade, and most importantly, those who perpetrated its deeds. Let's begin, shall we? According to The Root, via Harvard University historian Henry Louis Gates Jr. under Did Black People Own Slaves? Quote, the answers to these questions are complex, and historians have been arguing for some time over whether free blacks purchased family members as slaves in order to protect them, or whether, on the other hand, they purchased other black people, personal quote, as an act of exploitation, primarily to exploit their free labor for profit, just as white slave owners did. The evidence shows that, unfortunately, both things are true. The great African American historian, John Hope Franklin, states this clearly, personal quote, the majority of Negro owners of slaves had some personal interest in their property. There were instances, however, in which free Negroes had a real economic interest in the institution of slavery and held slaves in order to improve their economic status. Stop. Oxymoron bingo. You can't buy a family member to protect them from slavery and they still be counted as a slave. No, Israel. Those with personal interest were perfidious handlers and traders that lived in the Americas. Man, I'm going to prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt. But let's continue if you don't believe me in this video. Quote, in a fascinating essay reviewing this controversy, R. Halliburton shows that free black people have owned slaves, personal quote, in each of the 13 original states and later in every state that continues slavery, end quote. At least since Anthony Johnson and his wife Mary went to court in Virginia in 1654 to obtain the services of their indentured servant, a black man, John Castor, for life. Stop. Bingo. So as you can clearly and plainly hear, it was common for black people to have and trade slaves. And looking at the lack of any, let me say it again, and looking at the lack of any, one more time, and looking at the lack of any scriptural evidence of Israel enslaving Israel, or even a reprieve of the Deuteronomy punishments for some of Israel, to me that can only mean these are our perfidious enemies setting up shop so their elite ancestors could pseudo-naturally become our leaders in the future. Remember these facts. We will see them again next. Let's continue, please. Oh yeah, remember our Virginia black lover theory? You remember when I told you then our enemies bought the debt of all the white indentured servants and married them? If you remember that, check this out and listen closely. Quote, and for a time, free black people could even own the services of white indentured servants in Virginia as well. Bingo. Listen closely. Free blacks owned slaves in Boston by 1724 and in Connecticut by 1783. By 1790, 48 black people in Maryland owned 143 slaves. Listen up. One particularly notorious black Maryland farmer named Nate Butler, personal quote, regularly purchased and sold Negroes for the Southern trade. Say it again. Regularly purchased and sold Negroes for the Southern trade. He lived in Maryland. Halliburton wrote, stop. Bingo. Notice, they were Northern traders supplying the South with slaves. not large slave holders. That's the big thing. They weren't slave holders. No, they were just traders. They were, well, you'll see. You'll see all throughout this video, these videos. But let's continue for more clues, shall we? Listen closely. Quote, perhaps the most insidious and desperate attempt to defend the right of black people to own slaves was the statement made on the eve of the Civil War by a group of free people of color in New Orleans offering their service to the Confederacy. Let me say it again. Perhaps the most insidious and desperate attempt to defend the right of black people to own slaves was the statement made on the eve of the Civil War by a group of free people of color in New Orleans offering their services to the Confederacy, in part because they were fearful for their own enslavement. Personal quote, the free colored population of Louisiana own slaves, and they are dearly attached to their native land, and they are ready to shed their blood for her defense. They have no sympathy for abolitionists, no love for the North, but they have plenty for Louisiana. They will fight for her in 1861 as they fought to defend New Orleans from the British in 1814 through 1815, end quote. Stop. Bingo. So as you can plainly and clearly hear now, and even more in detail later, just like the scriptures attest, the Psalms 83 gang was with one consent. Their operatives spilled blood to ensure their pledge played out as planned here in America as well. Saying that, remember our African Area 51 discovery? You know, when we read they took the new and fresh clones to the outskirts and the islands to acclimate with the above the ground humans before they were shipped off? Come on now, you gotta remember, when I showed you on all the maps that out of all the people who had a hand in slavery, there wasn't one fort, trading post, etc., in Central and Southern Africa. Or how the Barbary pirates, etc., would always only raid the exact same settlements on the coastlines. And for once, we all were in complete agreement in asking, who in the 80s would move to those areas anymore anyway? Right. I can't hear your answer because this is a video. But if you remember those tidbits,